We've seen him circle the ring for weeks on end now, but finally we get to see what Brutus Beefcake is all about when he competes inside the squared circle. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tyler Vance Rants. I am your host, Tyler Vance himself. It is August 25th, 1984. Last week, Blackjack Mulligan announced that he would be returning to Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling to help the Nature Boy Ric Flair in his crusade against Chief Wahoo McDaniel. Wendy Richter was awarded a new WWF Women's Championship design, but had that ceremony interrupted by none other than the fabulous Moolah, and James J. Dillon pledged his allegiance to Paul Jones's army. Continuing where we left off from last week in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, biased Bob Caudle greets us on commentary and first brings us a tag team match between the Renegade and Mark Youngblood taking on Kurt Von Hess and Doug Vines. For once, Marky Mark actually manages to hold his own and doesn't have to hastily retreat into his corner and tag in his brother, because it's the Renegade who momentarily finds himself in trouble. Despite this, the Renegade manages to get himself out of trouble by using a flurry of knife-edge chops on Von Hess before tagging in Mark Youngblood, who then gets caught in a bear hug by the German. There it is. Either he's just following the example set by his older brother, or Mark Youngblood is simply falling into routine at this point, depending on how you want to analyze the situation. While in control of the younger Youngblood, Doug Vines accidentally hits Kurt Von Hess while he has Mark in his grasp, which leads to the Renegade and Mark Youngblood getting the slingshot win. It's sad when the other team has to screw up in order for you to be able to win, but hey, that's just the Youngblood brothers for ya. Backstage, Bob Caudle has the NWA television champion Tully Blanchard standing by for an interview, and Blanchard is still in possession of that television championship, as well as his $10,000, despite several wrestlers attempting to steal both from him over the past several weeks.
But you know, you can't steal in the United States of America. That's unlawful.
Caudle wants to know just exactly how Tully Blanchard feels about the American Dream Dusty Rhodes challenging him for a 1-hour match for the NWA Television Championship. How does Blanchard feel? Well, Tully Blanchard simply refers to the footage that we saw last week where the American Dream was left lying in a pool of his own blood after attempting to get one over on the NWA Television Champion.
2 times World Heavyweight Champion, TCB, 84 Tour, Unity Tour. He got left laying with 5 other people. Do you remember that piece of tape?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes, you do. You're not a 60-minute man. You weren't a 60-minute man when you were the World's Heavyweight Champion twice.
Maybe rethink your career, Dusty, because it would be a shame if you were prematurely put out of action permanently the next time you step inside the ring with Tully Blanchard. Brian Adidas takes on Randy Barber in singles competition next, and as the match gets going, Adidas wears his opponent down with several arm bars, focusing on hurting the shoulder of Barber. After spending so much time hurting the shoulder of Randy Barber, you'd think it would be something shoulder related that puts him out of action. But instead, Brian Adidas secures the win with a sleeper hold. Chief Wahoo McDaniel takes on Rocky King in one-on-one competition next, and as the bell rings, King tries to shake the Chief's hand, only to have his own slapped away. The Chief is incredibly methodical as the match gets underway, wearing his opponent down with a plethora of holds and powerful blows. A suplex and a trio of falling elbows is enough to secure Chief Wahoo McDaniel the 1-2-3. Backstage once more, Bob Caudle has the NWA World Tag Team Champions Don Kernodle and Ivan Koloff standing by for an interview, and alongside them is Nikita Koloff, the nephew of Ivan Koloff, and together the 3 of them comprise the NWA 6-man Tag Team Champions. The Pride of the Carolinas is beginning to sound like a broken record, as he once again reaffirms there is an open challenge to any tag team listening for a free shot at the NWA World Tag Team Championships.
So I'd like to ask all you teams to come on and try to get these belts.
Yet, the Renegade and Mark Youngblood continue to sign contracts to have matches against the likes of Kurt Von Hess and Doug Vines. Idiots. The Boogie Woogie Maniac, Jimmy Valiant, takes on Gary Royal next. but Valiant spends more time standing outside the ring like a goof and interacting with the fans, but the referee has had enough and calls for the bell to start the match.
Him to a tape match. Valiant now in the ring. The last couple of times we've seen him in.
Give that man a raise and a promotion. Once in the ring and with the match officially underway, it's clear to see that Jimmy Valiant has his fist taped up, and he threatens to use it against Gary.
Right after Gary Royal, over the top rope goes Royal.
Gary, you're a royal loser. Once Gary Royal is back in the ring, Jimmy Valiant keeps the energy high and tosses his opponent around the ring, but it all comes back to that taped fist, which Valiant uses against Gary Royal as Royal comes off the ropes to secure the W. Backstage once more, Bob Caudle has the NWA television champion Tully Blanchard standing by once more, but this time Blanchard is joined by Chief Wahoo McDaniel. Blanchard rightfully informs biased Bob Caudle to refer to Chief McDaniel as the NWA United States Heavyweight Champion, something that the Chief affirms as well.
We'll get along a whole lot better if you just call me the NWA television champion and Wahoo McDaniel's the undisputed U.S. champion.
Until NWA makes a ruling, you can call me the U.S. heavyweight champion.
Touching on the Blackjack Mulligan dilemma, Chief Wahoo McDaniel simply reaffirms the threat that he outlined to the hunter last week. Stay in the swamp, hunting hogs, and you will remain a healthy man. Tully Blanchard then takes aim at NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and says that he cannot wait to face off against Flair in Flair's own territory, in front of Flair's own hometown crowd, and absolutely embarrass the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. I know I'll be there front row center. James J. Dillon is Bob Caudle's next guest, and Dillon states that he is impressed with all of the quality of wrestlers that currently compete in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. But what's even more impressive is that James J. Dillon himself will be bringing in even more quality wrestlers in the Long Riders: Cowboy, Ron Bass, and Black Bart. Could these two just be more recruits for Paul Jones's army? Touching on his own career, James J. Dillon says that the biggest mistake that he ever made was not being a part of last November's Starrcade 83, a mistake that will not be repeated when it concerns this year's Starrcade 84 in November on the 22nd. Three men that we witnessed earlier, NWA World Tag Team Champions Don Kernodle and Ivan Koloff, who are accompanied by Ivan Koloff's nephew Nikita Koloff, are taking on the team of Paul Garner and Jim Horton next. Could you imagine if the Renegade and Mark Youngblood lost out on their quest for revenge against both the Pride of the Carolinas and the Russian Bear to a shock win from Horner and Garner? I keep saying it, but the Youngbloods are just plain stupid. Luckily for the Youngblood morons, both Jim Horner and Paul Garner don't have the skill set necessary to compete properly with the NWA World Tag Team Champions, and they end up losing hard to the duo's cannon. To finish off Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, biased Bob Caudle has Ricky Steamboat standing by for an interview, and Steamboat immediately says that he is getting very frustrated with the fact that whenever he wrestles Chief Wahoo McDaniel, Tully Blanchard interferes, and vice versa.
But it seems that whenever I wrestle against Wahoo, Tully seems to interfere, or when I wrestle against Tully, Wahoo seems to interfere.
Seethed, mauled, cope. Ricky is also furious that the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship hasn't been returned to him over the dubious victory that Chief Wahoo McDaniel had.
The United States belt is still being upheld by the NWA committee.
There wasn't anything dubious about it, Steamboat. You were flat on your back and you got pinned. On top of seething, mauling, coping, perhaps you should reevaluate yourself and realize that this is simply a skill issue on your end.
I don't know what to do more about it.
Whine and cry all you like, Ricky Steamboat, but Chief Wahoo McDaniel is the NWA United States Heavyweight Champion, not you, pal. Ricky Steamboat then brings out NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and announces that alongside Flair and Blackjack Mulligan, Ricky Steamboat is the third man in the alliance taking on Chief Wahoo McDaniel and Tully Blanchard. A crybaby, a false champion, and a swamp dweller. Ooh, scary!
Rick, I know your girlfriends say it. I know my girlfriends say it. Where's the beef?
I'm sure Susan Steamboat absolutely loved hearing about that. But now that Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling is over, it's time to tune into the WWF and its flagship show, Championship Wrestling. Vince McMahon and Tony Gurria are once again on commentary, and I cannot believe that I'm asking this, but could we possibly get Mean Gene Okerlund back on color commentary? Because while he may have been obnoxious, at least he didn't bore a hole through my skull the way that Tony Gurria does when he calls matches. Speaking of calling matches, the very first match of Championship Wrestling is a tag team match between Robbie Parliament and Rene Goulet taking on the Wild Samoans, Appa and Sika. Now that the Samoans have completely severed their ties with their former manager and Captain Lou Albano, it's no surprise that the animals in the crowd are completely behind these monsters, hooting and hollering for them like a bunch of clowns.
The Wild Samoans!
As the match begins, Goulet finds himself in trouble early on, so he retreats to his corner and tags in Robbie Parliament, who then goes on to first-hand experience what it's like to be a victim of the Wild Samoans, as he gets utterly destroyed by both Appa and Sika. Rene Goulet keeps interfering in the match in an attempt to help out his partner, but it has little to no effect on the outcome. Both Parliament and Goulet get whipped into each other before the Wild Samoans secure the W with falling headbutts. The mystery surrounding Brutus Beefcake is set to be lifted as the mysterious man takes on Jose Luis Rivera in one-on-one competition next. Beefcake takes his time getting into the ring, most likely due to the fact that Jose Luis Rivera poses as much of a threat to him as a fruit fly.
I think he's flaunting his beefcakes.
Never speak again, Gurria. Ever. I think an actual fruit fly would have done much better against Brutus Beefcake than Rivera did, as Jose is completely dominated and overpowered throughout the entire match. A beautiful power slam leads to a sit-out as Beefcake gets a very impressive victory. Dave Barbie takes on the Cobra Corps Commandant, Sergeant Slaughter, next.
Everybody is standing on their feet, and everybody's giving this man a standing ovation.
I'm not standing. And what did I say about speaking, Anthony? A poor forearm from Barbie after being forced to break from Sergeant Slaughter in the ropes leads to the Marine mocking his opponent. Mockery that seems to be well placed considering the Cobra Corps Commandant spends the rest of the match in complete control. The so-called competition between Dave Barbie and Sergeant Slaughter comes to an end after the Slaughter Cannon leads to the Cobra Clutch. Vince McMahon's favorite segment that he can conduct from the safety of a closed studio, the WWF Update, is next. This week McMahon is not taking shots at anybody, but rather pursing his lips, as he gets to talk about the WWF champion Hulk Hogan. The Hulkster recently attended a ceremony with an American football player. Vince said who it was, but I care so little about that sport that I really don't give a crap who he was. This is a professional wrestling show. But anyway, that's it. That's all Vince had to say. Yay? No. No yay. I want a refund for the time I paid watching that crap. At least the next segment will be entertaining, as even Freddie Blassie calls Piper's Pit.
This is, without a doubt, the most talked about program in the wrestling profession today.
Along with Blassie are Kamala and his handler Friday. And according to the manager, whenever the Ugandan beats on his stomach, it's not to indicate that he's hungry, but rather that the Ugandan nightmare is ready for war. Rowdy Roddy Piper then asks what knowledge Kamala has on professional wrestling, something that Freddie Blassie denies the Ugandan has any knowledge of. Instead, his expertise simply focuses on brutality.
No, the man knows nothing about wrestling. All he knows is brutality.
Oh, and by the way, in case you were wondering, Kamala is a cannibal.
The man is a cannibal, you know.
The main event of WWF Championship Wrestling and the week sees a magnificently resplendent man dressed in gold, simply known as the Spoiler, who Vince McMahon identifies as the current NWA National Heavyweight Champion.
The Spoiler, National Heavyweight Champion.
But this just isn't true. At this time, somebody by the name of Ted DiBiase is reigning as the NWA National Heavyweight Champion. And once again, Vince McMahon lies to you, and Tyler Vance comes to the rescue with some fact-checking. The spoiler is taking on Jeff Lang in singles competition, and once the bell rings, the spoiler immediately brutalizes his opponent in the ropes. The masked man then walks from one corner to the other across the top rope and drops an elbow onto Lang's head. There were times that the spoiler was so vicious and violent with his opponent Jeff Lang that I assumed Dick Worley would make the right call and call an end to the match on Jeff Lang's behalf. But then again, Dick Worley has already revealed that he is corrupt and probably fears for his own safety, so he allowed the match to continue. For some reason, David Wolf then joins guest commentary.
Mr. Dave Wolf. Dave, welcome.
How you doing, Vince?
Why is this loser constantly being given airtime to destroy my eardrums with his nasally voice? Is this some kind of favor to Cyndi Lauper? Coming off the top rope, the spoiler latches the claw onto Jeff Lang's skull and forces the man to submit. But before WWF Championship Wrestling can come to an end, David Wolf finally reveals why he joined the commentary booth.
Some very exciting things are going to be happening really soon, Vince. The fabulous Freebirds are going to be coming into the World Wrestling Federation.
For those that haven't tuned into my most recent episode on Tuesday Night Titans, somehow David Wolf is the newest manager of the fabulous Freebirds. Why? Well, according to David Wolf himself, he's buddies with Michael Hayes, Buddy Roberts, and Terry Gordy. You know how in every friend group there's usually the one person that everybody always makes fun of and ostracizes? And the reason they only keep them around is due to the fact that they can use them as a punching bag? That's you, David. With that, the week comes to an end. And while for once it's not a busy one in the National Wrestling Alliance, we did learn that James J. Dillon is bringing in a new tag team to Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, the Long Riders, composing of Cowboy Ron Bass and Black Bart. We also learned that Ricky Steamboat has pledged his allegiance to the trio comprising of him, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and Blackjack Mulligan in their crusade against Chief Wahoo McDaniel and Tully Blanchard. In the World Wrestling Federation, the spoiler had a viciously impressive debut. We got to learn a little bit more about Kamala on Piper's Pit, and Brutus Beefcake truly arrived. Now that he's given us a demonstration of what he's capable of within the squared circle, I am very much intrigued to learn more about Brutus Beefcake. Who is he? Why does he dress like a magician? I'm sure it's only a matter of time before Brutus Beefcake reveals what his real ambitions are. But one thing we've learned for certain is that Beefcake is not to be trifled with inside the ring. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Tyler Vance Rants. Make sure your ambitions are realized by hitting the bell, liking the video, and subscribing. You can also unveil the mystery behind me by following me on social media, where there's plenty of fun wrestling stuff for you to check out there. That's it for me for now. I'll see you next week. So long. Wearing down his opponent via the shoulder with a Chief Wahoo McDaniel takes on somebody.